So just while the others are coming on board, Nick, what is it that you are picking up that you're loving about it?
Hello, good morning.
You know what? Today, everything you do and whatever you do in business is all about people, networking. You know, and meeting people on this as well that I don't know. It's just adding more people to your network, and personal development for me in anything in business is very important. You know, the key to success is personal development. You know, leaders are readers, and personal development for me is first on the list, and I'm enjoying this.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm picking up today from a conversation that we had with Oscar Chalupsky. Is that how you pronounce his surname, Trevor? Chalupsky. So he came on board two or three mornings ago and just shared his story of his incredible successes in the sports arena as a surf skier, paddler, marathon runner, Ironman, so any number of sports at world level, as well as in the business arena, and even in his family. And that's not without the troubles that he's been through in terms of cancer. And so he really was, we've spoken about a role model and people that we can learn from, understand more a bit about life, and find traits that we think would be valuable for ourselves to be able to integrate into who we are. And as he was talking, I was thinking about this idea of a self-perpetuating cycle, because his first success was at the age as a sportsman, and a country in the country. He won a national competition at the age of 14, and then won the world championship when he was 49. And just was thinking about what is it that we're sowing into our lives, and what is it that what cycle are we creating when we get success early on, and what is it that we need to think about in order to start and keep the cycle going. And I'm pretty sure Guy had the same thinking, because soon after he sent a message to me saying, can we talk about what you reap is what you sow? So I'm going to bring up the slide deck. Sorry, I pressed the wrong button. So also learning, share. So the first slide is about what we plant into our minds. And now I think we might have seen this slide before. And so I'm going to move on to what you plant into your mind returns what you plant tenfold and more. So this is where I thought to start focusing our discussion this morning. And so I'm inviting you to think around and to share, what is it that we need to do to create this cycle of what we plant is what we reap, and maybe even just start there at the beginning.
Great, thanks for that, Lee. Anybody who would like to comment, please just either raise your hand or unmute your mic, and we'll. Sure. Good morning, Wisdom's Tribe. Are we awake this morning?
Well, there was a loss of sound all of a sudden.
There we go, Herman. Now, okay, Herman, sure, go for it.
Well, I've been thinking what you plant. What's that? As you plant, so you reap, and the problem is that for some of us it becomes a perpetual kind of cycle. In other words, we plant the same rubbish, yet expect a different harvest, so to speak. And what becomes critical is really to eventually reflect and say, why do I reap rubbish? and realize that we need to change our method of planting. And I think that's quite critical. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Herman. Guy?
Yeah, look, just for me personally, I don't like talking about me personally, but I've seen in my years that karma works without a doubt. It can come and give you a smack when you don't realize it, and when you don't realize it, it actually takes you to different levels. So I'm a very strong believer in karma. That's why one needs patience and a bit of understanding. Sometimes you've got to, less is more, and you've got to actually sometimes go with the flow and then break out of the flow. And it's all tied up to intuition. But look, I'm a karma person, so I'm into that. So thank you. Thank you for raising it today, Lee.
Right, thanks, Guy. Ian?
Yeah, actually, it's interesting. I was on a live presentation last night. Nick was on as well. There were 87,000 people around the world on this presentation. And one of the speakers said an interesting thing about your mindset. And he said that you've got to stand guard at the door of your own mind. And he used an analogy of having a cup of coffee and it's sitting on the desk and somebody comes along and puts sugar in it. He says, what have you got? Well, you've got very sweet coffee. He says, and what happens if somebody comes along and puts 2 drops of strychnine in your coffee? Yeah, then you're going to die. So he says, you've got to watch your coffee. So if you stand as a guard, if you stand guard at the door of your own mind, it allows you then to regulate and control what goes into your mind and what doesn't. So just on that point, yeah.
Great. Thanks, Ian. Yeah, I agree 100% with that. I think it's about taking conscious control of what you're exposing yourself to on a daily basis, and what you're listening to, what you're watching, what you're reading. So I'm very much a believer in that as well. Sela.
Morning, everybody. In just picking up from what Ian was saying, for me, it also brings the word accountability to mind. You know, most of the work that we do is more like counseling in nature. And when you work with people, you want them to first accept that they did the planting, because that's the challenge that I find a lot. And even for me, when I was doing my own kind of self-healing and going through my own personal development, I had to accept that all the results that I have, I'm the one that planted and I'm reaping what I planted, so that I can move on from that point and make different decisions. I think I'm just bringing that element of accepting that we are the ones who plant. Every single person that has whatever results, they are the ones who contributed to those results, no matter what they think is blame or grudge or attributing to somebody else. At the end of the day, the bus will stop with you.
Thanks, Sela. Yeah, I think you raised an interesting point there, because people do feel that external circumstances result in some of the results that they actually get, and you've actually turned that around and so you've got to take personal responsibility for your results, whatever they are. So I think that's an interesting addition to the discussion. Nick, yeah.
So thanks, Art. You know, what you think about expands. So let's take stress. How do people handle stress? You know, there's stress that you can control, and there's stress that you can't control. For example, if you take a page and you split it in half, on the left-hand side of the page, what are the stresses that you can't control that actually make you stress? So for example, you've got government, you've got coronavirus, you know, that type of thing. So that's stresses that you can't control. On the right-hand side, you've got stresses that you can control, like your kids, what do you want to buy food, and you don't have money to buy food. These are stresses that you can control. So on the left-hand side, you stress because you can't control the government and the coronavirus. So why stress? Forget about it. You can't control it. So why stress about it? And on the right-hand side, you've got stress that you can control. So again, why stress about it? Take a step back think about it, think the positive, and you will reap the rewards that you want eventually. My 5 cents.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Nick. Yes, Herman.
I'd like to come back to blaming outside circumstances. I've been, for the last couple of weeks, going through a process of self-reflection. And I went back as far as I could remember. Now, without wanting to go into details, if you as a kid at the age below of 10 get beaten up, pissed on, spit on by children and adults for the political beliefs of your parents, guys, this is having a devastating effect when growing up. And it was a handicap that affected me negatively for many, many, many years. The exercise I'm doing right now is why did I self-sabotage on occasions in my life? And a lot of that I can or a lot of that points to experiences I had, which I had no control over, came from outside. As I said, if you are having that kind of experience, I'm sorry, you're going to have a troubled life, which can be overcome, admittedly. But it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of tears. Thanks.
Right, thanks, Herman. Yeah, I think some very, very powerful points there. I'd love to bring Karina in on this. Karina, your first time on this forum. You must be wondering what you've got yourself into, but I'd love to hear your insights on the comments so far.
I'm just agreeing with everyone, and I think the last speaker was Nick, if I have it right. I mean, absolutely devastating, our history as part of the patterns that make us. But just agreeing with some and building on what some of the people were saying, Celo, love that you're saying. What I got from what you said is we don't just take accountability for our success and our failures, but also what you said, that we must take responsibility for what we plant. I mean, there's a study on obesity talking about internal locus of control. And they found a direct correlation between not having internal locus of control and people being obese. So that should tell us something. It's not my fault that that I eat so much, that type of thing. And then also, what is it, Nick, that said? Sorry, what you think about expands. I mean, that your example there is excellent. I mean, that's the Covey's talks about the circle of influence and how much time we spend on this circle that's not outside of our control, and how that then bleeds into what's in our control. And how sad is that? And then also, Guy, I'm also a big believer in karma. And definitely, I love the slide that Lee's got up at the moment, because we plant those bloody weeds and we expect not to reap them.
Great, thanks, Karina. Cecile, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the topic.
Wait a second, am I talking? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you're online.
Yes. When we were talking, when the conversation started, I was thinking a classic example of that was, my video is not working. Okay, there we go. Sorry. The classic example of that was when I started with telecommunications. I had a guy who appointed me as his sales manager. I was good at sales, but he appointed me as his sales manager. Well, bad mistake, because good salespeople are really bad sales managers. But he also appointed me as to recruit new salespeople. So then when and I would lead with sales, and the salespeople would be terrible. And then I would interview for days on end. I would interview people as new salespeople. And then a month down the line, and I would appoint them, and a month down the line or 2 months down the line, he would say, or a month down the line, why is the sale so bad? And then I realized I was not sowing anything. I was interviewing people, so I wasn't selling at that time. So yeah, so sometimes the sowing, well, all the time, the reaping comes a month or so after the sowing, even in the sales world.
Great, thanks, Cecile. Trevor, you were looking to comment there?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I love the farming analogy because almost everything that you apply in nature actually tends to apply to our lives. I don't understand why, but Lee will educate me on that. But I think I wanted to point out to this slide, this 20x, when you plant the correct seed, so it's the whole biblical story of a mustard seed that grows X number of exponential times. But it's the same with weeds. When you plant rubbish into the particular soil, and we can discuss fertile versus infertile soil and fertilization on a daily basis and all that sort of thing, but it's this, when you plant rubbish into your field, or you get a multiplication of weeds. So it's exactly the same as the good stuff. So just one bit of rubbish that you plant multiplies exponential times in that same field. So we've got to understand the basic, and we've got to play with this metaphor, and we've got to apply it to our lives.
Great, thanks, Trevor. Morning, Jasper. I'd like to bring you in there.
Morning. I was also on that webinar that Ian and Nick was on last night, so it was very inspirational. But the problem with mixing with people like yourself and Trevor and people like that, you start picking up their bad habits. One of the bad habits is everything that you see, you try and see, okay, well, what's the flip side of it? So when I saw the slide, I just picked up on the word weeds. Now, yes, one can make a big lesson out of it, but right now, what has been a weed for a long time and growing, proliferating very strongly, our cannabis weed. People love it, and all of a sudden people are now coming up with what's the medicinal value of this weed. So I'm just playing tongue-in-cheek with the word weed. And so yes, like Trevor said, it grows without really needing support and water. But is there something, so maybe the flip I want to put on this, is there something good around all the bad that I see out there? And yes, certainly don't become part of it. Another word that comes up in my mind is the power of agreement. Whatever I agree to, I have just made it true for me as well. So if people are negative about our circumstances around it, and there's now a lot of that stuff floating around, doomsday, end of the world, and how, you know, trying to see how this thing can unpack negatively forward. But why don't we play that same game and say, what's the good that we can get out of it, and trying to create the positive scenarios that can come out of this thing, and start sharing the positive scenarios, because for those who then agree on the positive scenarios for them, that will be true. And even in the worst world wars, some people became rich, some people became poor.
Great, thanks, Jasper. I think, you know, I really thought we'd been a good influence on you. So anyway, we'll have to flip that one as well. So thanks for that. Ian, yeah.
And yeah, just to go back to that little quote that I posted on that little WhatsApp network recently, was the saying that if the circle of people that you're around don't inspire you, then you haven't got a circle, you've got a cage. And I think that we can fall into the habit of being around, for instance, as Jasper says, negative people, and watching the TV every day and picking up all this negative trends that are going on, and we think there's doom and gloom, and we end up with not a circle of people that inspire us, but rather we're sitting in a cage and being influenced by what other people think and feel.
Thanks, Ian. Gavin, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one.
I think Jasper and I come from the same place. I was looking at the slide up there and noticed the S is starting to disappear, which makes the sign read "Weed for Sale." Pick your own. Besides that, I'm just listening.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lee. I think I'll hand back to you and you can pick it up from there.
I think the application is to ourselves. But as Stella reminds us, many of us are in the helping profession and are dealing with people, and it might even be family members. I'm thinking specifically now of a nephew who from a young age got it into his head that he's unlucky and that things don't work out for him. And it happens to him. And sometimes there are things that, as Herman says, are things that you think, how could this happen to this young chap? It does feel like the world is against him. And the more those things happen, the more they happen. And it is this strange dynamic that, yes, there is this self-sabotaging thinking that because of bad events have impacted us. And then there's also this external things that do affect us that we don't have any control over, but they affect us anyway. So my question is, how do we help people click out of that gear? Yes, we're responsible for ourselves. Is there something that we can do to help other people think differently about themselves, that they start to get different results?
Thanks, Lee. Yes, Nick?
Yeah, Lee, it's what I said, what I mentioned actually. What you think about expands. So if you're positive, and what Ian said, your circle is very important. You know, if you're around positive people, it's contagious. So it feeds into the other people, and you know what? The wonders happen. People say to me often, "Why? I've never seen you stressed. You're always smiling. You always there's always something happening with you." And yet, I'm involved in so many things, but I don't allow stress to get into my life because I don't think about it. I always look for the positive, and that is what's actually saved me. You know, at the end of the day, I've been to the dark side. Trust me, the dark side. And I promise you, even there, I didn't stress. Why? Because my mind remained positive. I never allowed the negative to get in, because what you think about, and it's important, is what you think about expands. Simple. That's how you help that guy. All we have to do is you have to tell him that he needs to change his thinking. He needs to change the way he speaks. You know, there's no such a thing as how I can't. It's how can I? You know, all these small things help you get to the next level.
Thanks, Nick. Yes, Herman.
People like that, and based on my own experience, start doing one thing. They start building very solid walls around them. I called myself that I was an emotional cripple for many, many years in my life. And I think assisting, you can't tell anyone to change their thinking. I think that's impossible. But what we can do is to assist them in breaking down that wall and realizing that their emotional damage is also not permanent. Thanks.
Thanks, Herman. Yeah, I think it's very powerful. Yes, Trevor.
Yeah, I think it's about role modeling. So let's go back to the analogy of the farm. And so you've got a guy there who has absolute bad luck, the blooming hail and the wind and everything on his farm annihilates his crop. But right next door to him is ourselves with our own crop of maize, and it's growing up 6 to 8 feet high. What's he going to do? He's going to, I believe just by demonstrating who you are and the passion that you have and the outputs that you have in your life, that guy who's got bad luck in his field next door to you is going to come across to you and say, how the hell do you do this? And then that's when you turn around, and it's someone like Oscar. Oscar is an absolute role model because he's out there, he's leading the pack, and other people are following him. Today, in fact, it's tomorrow morning, he'll do a coaching session and he'll have close to 300 odd people from around the world wanting to know how he was this 11-time world champ. And it goes back to the initial slide that we started off with, Lee. It's you as a role model, the information that you put into your mind, how you actually plant whatever it is into your field, the crops that grow, and how other people see those crops and they want to replicate whatever you're doing. So I think it comes back to you, how important you are in society to help other people because they see what you're about.
Great, thanks, Trevor. We are sort of heading towards 8:30. So what I'd like to do, Lee, if it's okay, is maybe just run through the group just for a final comment and a close off before we finish. So, Guy, yeah, go for it.
The Zig Ziglar slide is very good, very good. Thank you, Lee. As we all know, the research shows we have about 60,000 thoughts a day, and about 75% of them are negative. So there's the trick: is you got to work on your thinking big time, all day, every day, and you got to be around people that have the right type of thinking and positive thinking, and that's it. Thank you very much. I'll send a note to everyone. I'll see you on Friday. Unfortunately, I have a client at 8 o'clock tomorrow. Thank you.
Thanks, Guy. Yeah, it was always good to have business. So let's not diminish the value of having business. Cecile.
No, it's a joke. It's a wake-up joke.
This just reminds me, today I am going to sow like hell. I've got hands full of seeds and I'm going to sow like hell the next 2 days anyway before it's weekend.
Yeah, did you?
Oven? Can I come in there?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah, so yes, life, business is about sowing and reaping. The more you sow, the more you reap eventually. You know, not everything's gonna grow. You know, the wind might take it and put it, if you sow your seeds, you know, Jim Rohn, he's got a famous example that he explains, and he says, you sow, you sow, you sow, but there's a wind that comes, and the wind takes the seeds and pushes them, takes them to the stones, and it takes them to the open land, and it's that one seed that you're looking for, that one seed. So keep sowing, stay positive. Eventually that one seed is going to take. I've posted something on the group for everybody about this. Listen to it. It's very inspirational, and hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Nick. Ian?
Yeah, nothing further to add. Enjoyed the conversation today and look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow.
Thanks, Ian. Gavin, you want a final word?
I think I'm being a bit flippant this morning. I wanted to show Nick a picture of Darth Vader in terms of the Force. And then just in terms of sowing, the only thing that comes to mind is, guys, there's a tremendous need out there for nurses at old age homes to get masks, and we can't buy them anywhere. So if anybody's got a skill of sewing in the literal sense, please, I've got the pattern and everything. We need help. Okay.
Great, thanks, Gavin. Jasper?
Nothing to add, Ivan. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jasper. Yes, Herman?
To Gavin, I have access to masks. Maybe we can connect and I can assist you there. Thanks again for a very inspiring session. And my closing word is, one thing I've learned is, despite all the crap, there is no lost cause. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Herman. I think that's powerful. Karina.
Well, my first visit and thoroughly enjoyed it. So thanks for the opportunity.
Karina. Celo.
Yes, thank you guys for the session. And just in my closing remarks, it's role models like Trevor was saying. To answer your question, Lee, how do we help people transcend from that point of pain? It's role models. It must be modeled practically. You can't just tell someone to change, but if they see that there's change in somebody else who's going through the same circumstances, role modeling really does work. We're talking about planting, so it's, you know, the seed sometimes, like you were saying, it moves, it goes to stop, but there's that one seed that gets planted correctly, you know. I really believe in that as well. And we're talking environment, we're talking conditions, if we're really going to go with the metaphor of planting. But it's that one seed. If you get the right person to be your role model, if you get the right group maybe to be in a chat session with, it can trigger something and you can move forward.
Great, thanks, Celo. Trevor.
I just want to seed the thought that if each one of us actually just expand our little network to 10 and get them onto this environment, imagine the growth there. And if we expand it to 20, but I'm not thinking that, if one of us each can expand it to 100, and I think we have the ability and we should be driving to connect with 1,000 people each. Can you imagine what we could actually do there if we are seeding this type of information into each one of us times 1,000 each? How this could grow into something absolutely significant for each one of us to grow the businesses that we want to grow here. So I'm excited about the potential of what we're playing with here, seeding this idea of this technology and maybe coming out with a new crop of business opportunities.
Right, thanks, Trevor. Lee.
Am I the last one?
Yeah, except for me.
Yeah, so I'm going to pick up tomorrow from Guy mentioned the Zig Ziglar quote. I sort of brought it up quickly, but I think it's a natural progression of our thinking in terms of what it is that we are putting out and what are we getting in return. So let's pick up the conversation there tomorrow.
Great, thanks, Lee. And then just a final thought from me. You know, I think there have been some powerful ideas and thoughts here. For me, it's about how you react to a situation. It's the way you deal with whatever's being presented to you. You can deal with it negatively, or you can deal with it positively, or look for the positives in it. As Herman says, there's no lost cause, but you know, it's how you react to those situations that are given to you on a daily basis. So that's my final word. So thanks, everybody. I think a great discussion today, and look forward to seeing you all tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Cheers then.